Welcome back to the deep dive, everyone. Got some really fascinating stuff to unpack this time around.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Especially, those of you listening, you always give us such great material to work with.
Hmm.
But this time, I was really particularly struck by the paper Historical Reasoning Towards a Framework for Analyzing Students' Reasoning About the Past. Van Dry and Van Boxtel.
Wow. Yeah. What a paper. I mean, it really kind of gets to the heart of what it means to think historically.
Right, like it's not just about
Yeah.
memorizing dates and names and all that, but really how do we make sense of the
Yeah.
past? How do we reason about it?
Right. Because we kind of assume, when we read history or learn about it, it's just kind of there,
Right.
right? But actually, there's this whole process of how do we construct that understanding? How do we think about it critically?
Yeah, and I think that's what's so exciting about this deep dive today is like getting into the nuts and bolts of like, what does it actually mean to reason like a historian? And I think, we've got this framework with these 6 elements that Van Dry and Boxtel lay out, and we could really think of those as tools, right? Like tools for thinking.
I love that. Tools, yeah, like a toolkit for making sense of the past, for analyzing information, for constructing arguments, for even just asking the right questions to begin with.
Okay, so let's dive into those tools, those 6 elements.
All right, let's do it.
So we have uh, asking historical questions, using sources, contextualization, argumentation, using substantive concepts, and using meta-concepts.
Whoa, okay, that's a lot. That's a lot to unpack.
It is a lot, but I think it's going to be,
But it's exciting. I'm excited.
yeah, I think it's going to be really fun to kind of tease these apart. And I think you'll see as we go through it that like a lot of this is stuff that we kind of do naturally already.
Yeah, we just don't necessarily have the labels for it, right?
Exactly.
Exactly, the framework.
So maybe we could start with that first one, asking historical questions.
Oh, that's a good one. Because I think sometimes, we think of history as just receiving information, right? Like, here are the facts, learn them. But actually, history starts with a question, right? With curiosity,
Mm.
with wanting to know something. And the way we frame that question is really going to shape the way we approach trying to answer it.
And I think that's such a good point, like that the questions we ask really drive the kind of reasoning that we do.
Absolutely.
And the paper actually talks about different types of questions. Right?
Yeah, yeah. You've got your descriptive questions, like what happened, just kind of laying out the basic events. Then you've got your causal questions, the why did this happen? Like what were the factors that led to this event? Then you've got your comparative questions. How is this similar to or different from something else? And then I think one of the most powerful types of questions are the evaluative questions.
Oh, yeah. Tell me more about that.
So evaluative questions, those are the ones that really push us to make judgments, to weigh different factors, to think critically about the relative importance of things.
Yeah. And the paper actually gives this, I thought this was such a brilliant example of
Right.
like how you can rephrase a question to make it more of an evaluative question.
Hmm.
So they start with the question, what caused World War I?
Right, a classic question.
Right, which is fine. But then they say, how about we rephrase that as, what is the most important cause for the outbreak of World War I?
Ooh, much
Yeah.
more interesting, right? Because now suddenly you have to weigh all those different factors that might have contributed, the alliances, the nationalism, the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, all those things. And you have to make a judgment call. Which one was the most significant? And that kind of forces you to really think critically, to analyze the evidence, to construct an argument.
Yeah, and it's not just enough to say, well, this one's important and that one's important.
Right, right. You have to actually build a case for why you think one factor outweighs the others.
And that's where the real historical reasoning comes in.
Exactly. And the paper even mentions a study showing that these kinds of evaluative questions are way more effective at sparking that kind of deeper, more complex historical thinking.
It's like it kicks your brain into a higher gear.
It does. It's like a challenge, right? Your brain's like, oh, I can't just list facts now. I have to actually analyze and evaluate.
And, I think what's really cool is that it's not just about, these big historical questions like World War I.
Hmm.
The paper gives this example of a classroom,
Oh, yeah.
where a student is just describing, like peasants working for the nobility.
Right. Just kind of like a simple statement of fact.
Yeah, and instead of just kind of letting that sit there, the teacher asks, why did these people obey this system?
Boom, mic drop. Right. Like suddenly the whole classroom has to shift gears.
Right, and you're getting into, okay, what were the power dynamics at play?
Right.
What were the social structures?
Were there any alternatives even? Did they have any choice?
Right, and so just that one little word, why, suddenly unlocks this whole new level of understanding.
Totally. It's like a doorway into deeper historical thinking.
Okay, so we've got our questions,
We're curious. We're asking questions.
but now we need something to answer them with, right?
Right. We need some evidence, some information.
Which brings us to our next element, using sources.
Oh, yes. The lifeblood of history, right. We can't just make things up. We have to base our understanding on something real, something tangible. And that's where sources come in. And it's not just about, dusty old textbooks.
Right, and this is what I think is so cool, is that the paper emphasizes the diversity of sources.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
So it's not just written documents, although those are important, but it's also images, objects, things from the time period.
Material culture, archaeology, all sorts of things can be sources.
And I think the paper makes this really important distinction, which I think is so valuable,
Okay, what is it?
between reasoning with documents and reasoning about documents.
Oh, that's a good one. Tell me more.
Right, so like reasoning with documents, that's kind of what we were just talking about, like using them to answer our questions.
Right, like extracting information from them to support our claims, our arguments.
But reasoning about documents, this is where it gets really interesting, because this is where we're thinking critically about the source itself.
Oh, okay, I see. Like not just what the document says, but who wrote it, why did they write it, what was their perspective, what might they be leaving out, what are their biases.
Exactly.
So it's like going a level deeper, right? It's not just taking the information at face value, but interrogating the source itself.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of like becoming a detective, right?
Totally, like a historical detective.
Like you're not just reading the clues, you're thinking about, okay, who left these clues? Why did they leave them here? What are they trying to tell me? Or what are they trying to hide?
And that's what historians do, right? They're constantly questioning their sources, trying to understand their context, their limitations, their potential biases.
And the paper actually brings up this work by Weinberg.
Oh, Weinberg. Yeah, he's done some fascinating research on how historians think.
Yeah, and he found that historians have these, like, specific habits when they're approaching a document.
Like what?
So one is contextualization.
Okay, so putting the document in its historical context, right?
Exactly. So before they even start reading, they're thinking about, okay, when was this written? Who wrote it? What was going on in the world at that time?
Right, because that's going to shape how they interpret the document. Right.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And then they also, what's the word? They source the document.
Source it, yeah.
Which is a fancy way of saying they think about its origins, its author, its purpose, even before they read the content itself.
Yeah, and then they corroborate.
Ah, corroboration, classic historian move.
Right, so they're comparing it to other sources.
Making sure it's not just one person's crazy idea, right?
Exactly. Like, does this match up with what we know from other sources? Are there any contradictions, any inconsistencies?
Right, because no source is perfect, right?
Right.
Every source has its limitations, its perspective.
And what Weinberg found was that, students often don't do this.
Oh, interesting.
Like they kind of just treat a text as like, okay, this is the information.
Right, like it's just neutral, objective truth.
And they don't necessarily think about those deeper questions of like, okay, who created this? Why? What might be missing?
That's a learned skill, right, to be able to think critically about sources.
Totally. And the paper, it actually mentions a study on how children's understanding of historical evidence develops.
Oh, interesting.
And like younger kids, they kind of see the past as just given, like it just is what it is.
Right, like it's just facts in a textbook.
But then as they get older, they start to understand that, oh, actually the past is something that we reconstruct based on evidence.
And that we evaluate that evidence based on certain criteria, right?
Exactly. And I think that's where, this idea of reasoning about documents really comes in.
Totally. It's about becoming more sophisticated, more critical in our thinking about sources.
Yeah. And the paper, it has this chat excerpt where these students, Rosen and Wilma, they're discussing this historian's viewpoint on whether the 1960s were revolutionary.
Okay, so they're using a source to try to answer a historical question.
Exactly. And they're quoting the historian, so they're reasoning with the document.
Mm-hmm.
But what the paper points out is that they're not really reasoning about the document.
Oh, I see. So they're not really questioning the historian's perspective, his background, his potential biases.
Right. And they're not comparing it to other historians. They're not really like weighing the evidence.
So they're kind of just taking this one historian's word as gospel without really digging deeper.
And it's not that that's necessarily wrong.
It's a starting point, right?
It's a starting point, but it's just showing how like simply quoting a source doesn't mean you're really understanding it in all its complexity.
Right. It's like the difference between reading a recipe and actually being able to cook a dish.
Okay, so we've got our questions, we're engaging with sources, but now we need to kind of like put it all together.
Right. We need to make sense of it all.
And that's where contextualization comes in.
Ah, context, so important. It's like the background music to the movie of history.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think the paper, it emphasizes that, contextualization is about understanding that the past is not the present.
Oh, yeah, that's huge. We can't judge people in the past by our own modern standards.
Exactly. So we have to try to understand events in their specific time and place.
Right, like what were the social norms, the political climate, the economic realities of that time?
And I think the paper introduces De Keyser and Van de Peet's three frames of reference.
Oh, okay, I like frameworks. Let's hear it.
So we've got
Those
chronological
like time, right?
sequence of events, like building a timeline in your mind.
Absolutely. Got to know when things happened in relation to each other,
That's visual.
where things happen, the geography, the physical environment.
And then so,
Okay, the people, the relationships, the social structures, the culture.
and I think the paper, I love this quote from Schimelt.
Oh, yeah. What do you say?
He talks about how, adolescents often struggle to grasp the broader historical context.
Mm-hmm.
And he says it's like understanding isolated scenes of a play.
Without knowing the plot.
Right, without knowing the overall narrative.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
And I think that's so true. Like, if you don't have that chronological framework,
Mm-hmm.
it's like, how do you even make sense of anything, right?
It's just a jumble of random events.
And then there's this idea of historical empathy.
Oh, empathy. That's tricky, right?
Yeah, and I think, it's not about saying that we agree with everything people did in the past,
Definitely not.
but it's about trying to understand why they did what they did.
Within their own context, their own beliefs, their own values.
And the paper mentions this Chatter project,
Mm-hmm.
and they have this model of progression.
Okay, tell me about it.
So it starts with this idea that, younger kids, they might kind of see people in the past as like primitive or stupid.
Right, like they just didn't know any better.
But then as they develop, they start to understand that, oh, actually, people in the past had their own reasons for doing things.
Even if those reasons seem strange or wrong to us now.
Exactly. And that's where historical empathy comes in.
It's about trying to see the world through their eyes, even if we wouldn't have made the same choices.
Yeah. And the paper, it brings up Weinberg again.
Good old Weinberg, always full of insights.
And he talks about these 6 types of contextual comments that historians use.
Okay, 6 types. This is getting serious.
So we've got spatiotemporal,
Time and place, we talked about that.
social rhetorical,
Like how people were using language, how they were trying to persuade each other.
biographic.
Ah, so understanding the people involved, their backgrounds, their motivations.
Historiographic,
Okay, so like how other historians have interpreted this event.
linguistic,
The actual language used, the words, the meanings. Yeah.
and analogical.
So comparing it to other events, finding similarities or differences.
And I think what's so cool about this is it just shows how deeply historians immerse themselves in the context.
Right. It's not just about knowing the date and the place. It's about understanding the whole world that surrounded that event.
And the paper, it mentions this study on how novices and experts date historical sources.
Oh, interesting. So like, how do you figure out when something was written if it doesn't have a date on it?
Exactly. And what they found was that experts, they draw on this much broader network of knowledge.
Like what?
So like landmarks, key events, related concepts.
Ah, so they're using their existing knowledge to make an educated guess.
And periodization, so like knowing, okay, this style of art was popular during this era.
It's like a giant puzzle, right? They're piecing together all these clues.
And the paper has this this dialogue excerpt where these students, Lauren and San, they're interpreting a Cold War cartoon.
Oh, cartoons. Those can be tricky.
Yeah, and what's really cool is that they're using their knowledge of the Cold War period, the division of Germany, the spread of communism,
So they're drawing on their historical context.
to make sense of the cartoon's message.
That's awesome. Like they're not just looking at the picture, they're bringing all this other knowledge to bear.
Okay, so we've asked our questions, we're using sources critically, we're putting things in context, but now we need to actually make an argument.
Right, we need to present our understanding to make a claim about the past and back it up with evidence.
Which brings us to argumentation.
The heart of historical thinking, right. It's not enough to just have information. We have to be able to use it to make a case, to persuade others, to engage in debate.
And the paper It contrasts informal reasoning in history with formal reasoning.
Okay, what's the difference?
So formal reasoning is like, in math or logic.
Right, where there's a clear right answer, a clear logical proof.
But historical reasoning, it's often about probabilities.
Ah, so it's more about weighing the evidence, considering different interpretations, acknowledging uncertainty.
And the paper mentions these three criteria for evaluating informal reasoning.
Okay, hit me with those criteria.
So acceptability of support,
So, like, is the evidence you're using actually relevant and credible?
strength of support,
So, how strong is the connection between your evidence and your claim? Is it a weak link or a strong link?
and consideration of counterarguments.
Ah, so being able to anticipate objections to your argument and address them head on.
And I think what the paper points out is that students often do okay with presenting arguments to support their own claims,
They can find evidence, they can make a case.
but they often struggle with the counterarguments and with weighing different pieces of evidence.
It's easier to just stick to your guns, right?
Yeah, it's easier to just pick a side and say, this is the truth.
But good historical thinking requires being open to other perspectives, to being willing to change your mind if the evidence warrants it.
And the paper has this excerpt from Rick and Joni's essay where they're arguing that the 1960s were revolutionary.
Okay, making a bold claim there.
Yeah, and what's really cool is that they actually address a counter-argument about Provo being limited to Amsterdam.
So they're acknowledging a different perspective.
And they even talk about the trustworthiness of their source.
So they're engaging in that reasoning about documents that we talked about earlier.
And it just shows a more developed understanding of how to build a historical argument.
Right. They're not just stating their opinion, they're supporting it with evidence and engaging with other viewpoints.
Okay, we're over halfway through our 6 elements.
Phew, we're on a roll. What's next?
All right, so next up is using substantive concepts.
Substantive concepts. Okay, that sounds fancy. Break it down for me.
So basically, every field has its own language.
Right, like doctors have all their medical jargon.
And historians have their own set of concepts, these specialized terms that they use to talk about the past.
Okay, so like empire, revolution, feudalism, things like that.
Exactly. And the paper actually distinguishes between different types of concepts.
Oh, this is getting deep.
So there are unique concepts which are specific to a particular thing.
Like the French Revolution, that's a unique concept.
Inclusive concepts, which cover multiple instances.
So revolution in general, that would be an inclusive concept.
And then there are these colligatory concepts, which are kind of like big umbrella terms.
Like the Renaissance or the Enlightenment, those big sweeping historical periods.
And what's really interesting is that the paper points out that these concepts, they can be really challenging for students.
Oh, yeah, I can imagine. They're abstract. They're often kind of slippery. Their meaning can change depending on the context.
And there's always this risk of anachronism.
Ah, anachronism, that's a big one. So like using a word from today to describe something in the past that didn't have that same meaning back then.
Exactly. And the paper mentions this, finding that, just because a student uses a concept correctly,
Like they can say the word feudalism.
it doesn't necessarily mean they really understand what it means.
It's more than just memorizing a definition, right? It's about understanding how that concept actually functioned in the past.
And the paper goes back to that classroom discussion excerpt.
Oh, the one with the peasants and the nobility?
Yeah, and it's interesting to see how the students, they start out using more everyday language.
Like men with armor and peasants.
And then they shift to more specific historical terms.
States and serfs. Okay, getting more precise.
And then the teacher introduces this concept of system
Ah, so like the feudal system.
to explain the underlying social structures.
So it's not just about describing what people were wearing or what they were doing. It's about understanding the bigger picture, the way society was organized.
Okay, we've got one more element to go.
Bring it on. I'm ready for the grand finale.
All right, so this last one is using meta concepts.
Meta concepts. Okay, now my brain is officially hurting. What are those?
So meta concepts are kind of like concepts about history itself.
Whoa, okay, so like thinking about history.
Yeah, so it's the big ideas, the fundamental principles that guide how historians investigate and describe the past.
Okay, give me some examples.
So like cause, change, evidence, explanation.
Ah, okay, so like not just what caused the French Revolution, but how do historians even think about causation in the first place?
Exactly. And I think what's so cool about meta concepts is that they're not just, abstract philosophical things. Like they actually have real world applications.
Oh, yeah, totally. Like understanding causation, that's helpful in any field,
Yeah,
right?
like-
Trying to figure out why something happened, whether it's a historical event or a problem at work.
And the paper actually talks about change over time as a
Yeah.
key meta concept.
Okay, change over time seems pretty basic.
But it's actually really complex.
How so?
Well, because there's so many different kinds of change.
Right, like political change, economic change, social change, cultural change.
And change can happen gradually or suddenly.
Revolutions versus evolutions.
And the paper mentions this study by Barton where he compared U.S. and Northern Ireland students' views on who drives historical change.
Oh, interesting. So, like, do they think it's individuals, great men and women, or is it more about broader social forces?
And what he found was that, their views were actually shaped by their own backgrounds.
Ah, so like their own experiences of conflict and change in their societies.
Exactly. So it just shows how, like, even our understanding of something as fundamental as change can be influenced by our own perspectives.
Right, we bring our own baggage to our interpretation of history.
Another important meta concept is comparison.
Oh, yeah, comparison. That's a classic tool for historians.
It's about identifying similarities and differences between different events or periods.
So we can see what's unique and what's common.
And then there's explanation.
Explanation, so like answering the why questions.
But in history, explanation is rarely simple.
Yeah, it's usually not just one cause leading to one effect.
It's usually a whole web of interconnected factors.
Multiple causes, long-term and short-term causes, obvious causes, and hidden causes.
And the paper points out that students often have this tendency to explain events from a very intentionalist, personalistic perspective.
So like focusing on the motives of individuals like kings or generals.
But historians, they tend to take a more holistic view.
They consider the broader context, the social forces, the economic factors.
And the paper has this example at the end of the essay where the students are discussing the causes of changes in youth behavior in the 1960s.
Okay, so they're trying to explain a social phenomenon.
And what's cool is that they're actually recognizing that there were multiple causes at play.
Like what?
So they talk about World War II, they talk about socioeconomic developments, they talk about changing mentalities.
So they're moving beyond a simple this caused that kind of explanation.
Exactly. They're understanding that history is complex and messy, and there are usually multiple factors at play.
It's like a big tangled knot.
Okay, so we've gone through all 6 elements, but now I think we have to address the elephant in the room.
Uh-oh, elephant in the room. What is it?
So the paper kind of ends with this question, like, is historical reasoning really its own thing?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. Is it just reasoning in general applied to history?
And they call that section reasoning or historical reasoning.
Interesting. So they're kind of questioning the very nature of historical thinking.
And they acknowledge that there's this debate. Some people say, well, reasoning is reasoning, it's all the same.
Like the same basic principles apply, whether you're thinking about history or science or math.
But then others say, well, actually, historical reasoning is kind of special
How so?
because it's shaped by specific historical knowledge
Right, you need to know the facts, the events, the context.
and by those meta concepts that we just talked about,
Those big ideas that guide historical thinking.
and even by our underlying beliefs about how we come to know things about the past.
So like our epistemology of history.
And I think the paper, it kind of leans towards the idea that historical reasoning is more domain specific.
So it's not just general reasoning, it's something more particular to history.
And they give this example of students and history teachers discussing the comparison of Saddam Hussein and Adolf Hitler.
Oh, that's a loaded comparison.
And what they found was that the teachers, because they had this deeper historical knowledge and this nuanced understanding of context, they were able to reason in a way that was fundamentally different from the students.
They could see the similarities and differences more clearly. They could weigh the evidence more effectively. They could avoid the trap of making simplistic analogies.
So to kind of bring it all together,
Okay, let's wrap it up.
I think what we've seen is that historical reasoning is this active, dynamic process.
It's not passive. It's not just absorbing information.
It starts with asking questions.
Curiosity, wanting to know why.
It involves correctly engaging with sources.
Not just reading them, but interrogating them.
It requires contextualization.
Putting things in their time and place.
It involves argumentation.
Making a case, supporting it with evidence. Considering counter-arguments.
It uses substantive concepts.
The specialized language of history.
And meta-concepts.
The big ideas that guide historical thinking.
And I think what's so exciting about this is that these skills, they're not just useful for understanding the past.
Right. They have implications for how we think about the world in general.
Like how we analyze information, how we evaluate evidence, how we make decisions.
And I think that's the real takeaway here, right? That historical thinking is not just for historians, it's for everyone.
So our final thought for you.
All right, listeners, time for some homework.
How might you consciously apply these 6 elements, asking questions, using sources, contextualizing, arguing, using concepts, and using meta-concepts in your everyday life?
Yeah, like when you're reading the news, when you're having a debate with a friend, when you're trying to make sense of a complex issue.
Which of these elements do you find most challenging? Which ones are you already pretty good at?
And how can you use these tools to become a more critical, informed, and engaged citizen?
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope you've learned something new, and we encourage you to keep exploring the fascinating world of historical reasoning.
Until next time.
See ya.